They say talk is cheap, so let's add some value to your voice. It's Targeted Impressions with Scott Cody. Have you ever been stuck in a conversation with someone? What the heck is going on here? When is this conversation going to be over? Or worse, have you been stuck in a conference room listening to some blowhard reading directly from a PowerPoint? Why have we lost the ability to effectively communicate? It's because too many of us start talking or start communicating or start presenting or start advertising without a plan, without intentionality. Welcome into the show. I'm Scott Cody, Executive Director of 3131 Media Solutions. You know, we had a goal in 2023 as a company. We wanted to start a podcast. Well, everyone has a podcast, right? Seems like it anyway. So how could we be different? How could we record something that actually hasn't been done? That's tough to do. Have you seen the number of podcasts that are out there? But also, we wanted to bring value to you, the listener, but also to the people who will join us on the show as we move forward. Our goal, our intention was to focus on intentional communications and talk with people who are effective communicators. And in the process, hopefully give our listeners a reason to download these episodes, to learn something, to get an amusing story maybe, to hear from a person that actually interests them. You know, I've been blessed to be challenged from my parents, to my friends growing up, to my teachers, my wife, even my children, to be at least a competent communicator, if not an effective one. So as I meandered from Lubbock, Texas to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, to Birmingham, Alabama, and eventually settling here in New Orleans, I was even more blessed to meet and interact with so many, not just effective, but brilliant communicators. So I learned as much as I could from each and every one of them. And with this podcast, we're going to try in a very informal, very fun, very lighthearted way to bring as much of that wisdom and experience to you so that you don't become the person who's reading from the PowerPoint or who's being stared at with a glossed over look of indifference because your story has no end. I'm dedicating this introductory episode to my daughters, both brilliant, both beautiful. They're gonna grow up. They're gonna do awesome things. But there was a moment with one of them that stood out and ultimately kind of became the purpose of this show. As I kind of sat back and thought about it, my oldest daughter, she had to sell sponsorships for her dance team. She's brilliant. Both my daughters really are. But for the sponsorships that the oldest one had to sell, she had to go out and knock on doors. She had to pick up the phone and call. She had to work, and her pitch was good. She ended up selling, if not the most, one of the most amount of sponsorships for this deal, and we were proud of her until she got to her first voicemail that she had to leave. So she's calling a business. They don't pick up. The answering machine or the voicemail message kicks in, and she sits there like a deer in headlights. And I was so embarrassed for her. The stuff that started coming out of her mouth was so incoherent, didn't make any sense. And I realized at that point she had never, ever left a voicemail. But it wasn't her fault. I'd never taught her how to leave a voicemail. I taught her how to go door to door, how to make a sale, how to look someone in the eye, how to shake their hand. But I had never taught her something as simple as how to leave a voicemail. And it ended up almost ruining that sale. We ended up calling back, and luckily the guy eventually answered, and she ended up having a decent conversation. But it got me thinking about, what if all of these boring presentations and these endless discussions about nothing and the meetings that could have been an email, what if we could find a few tips from a few pros and help us take one person from a mediocre communicator to an effective one, from a good communicator to a great one? What if we could make one more meeting enjoyable? So that's our goal, intentional communication. Our cadence for this show is kind of up in the air for now. We want to give ourselves time to put together good stuff, but we don't want you to forget about us. So we're going to shoot right now for a weekly podcast. I'm not going to promise that's what it's going to be, but we are going to have CEOs and community leaders, entrepreneurs, people that make a living telling stories in real time about the things they are watching. We got some pretty cool guests. Each of these guests, though, is going to have a different perspective on how they get their message effectively relayed to the right audience. And I can tell you something, they don't wing it. They practice. everything that these people do to become effective communicators starts and ends with practice. So thanks for listening today. I hope you found enough reasons to download the podcasts. I've always wanted to say that. Download our podcast wherever you can download podcasts. But seriously, we're going to be on Google, and we're going to be on Apple, and we're going to be on Spotify and all those. So we hope that you'll download. We hope that you'll listen to it. And seriously, thanks. We're going to work our butts off to make sure that the time that you give us, whether it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or maybe we've got a really good guest and that goes on for an hour, whatever time that you're going to invest with us, we're going to make sure that it's worth it. This is Targeted Impressions. I'm your host, Scott Cody. Until next time.